Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down what is quite possibly the most valuable skill in tech right now. Building AI that doesn't just talk, it actually acts.
And that quote you're seeing, it really nails the key shift happening right now. We're moving way beyond just simple text generation. We're talking about creating AI systems that can plan, use tools, and knock out complex, multi-step tasks, all on their own.
So what do we call this whole new category of AI projects? Well, it has a name, Agentic AI.
All right, so let's really dig into what that means. You know, a normal call to an LLM, it just gives you a straight answer, right? Well, these agentic systems are different. They can actually think, they can act, they can use tools like a calculator or a search engine, and they can even look back at their own work to figure out how to get to the goal.
Okay, but here's maybe the single most important thing to get right from the start. Not all agentic systems are created equal. There's a huge, crucial difference between what we call a structured workflow and a truly autonomous agent.
Think about an agentic workflow as a recipe. It follows a very specific, predefined path. You, the developer, you're the one writing the recipe. First, do this, then do that. It makes the whole process super predictable, structured, and, a lot safer. Now, a true AI agent, that's the master chef. You don't hand a master chef a recipe, right? No, you give them a goal, make me a delicious dinner, and you give them the ingredients. They have the freedom, the autonomy to figure out all the steps on their own. It's a lot less predictable, for sure. It's non-deterministic. But wow, the potential reward is so much higher.
So let's make this super concrete. If you're doing something like processing an invoice, you absolutely cannot afford any mistakes. That's a perfect job for the recipe, the workflow. But if you have a big, creative, open-ended goal, like, hey, build me a website from scratch that has the game Snake on it, well, for that, you need the master chef. You need the power of a true agent.
In this right here, this leads to a massive insight for anyone building with AI today. So many problems people are trying to solve don't actually need that full-blown master chef. An agentic workflow is a much better fit. You can get almost all the benefits of these systems without taking on all the risk. Seriously, just by plugging a single LLM-powered step like summarization or data extraction into a process you already have, you can get incredible results. You don't always have to go for the super powerful, all-knowing, autonomous agent.
So let's really dive into this recipe versus master chef idea because it perfectly illustrates the difference. So with the workflow, our recipe, it's all about control. It follows strict, predefined instructions. The AI acts like a smart tool within each step. Think of it like a smart scale in your kitchen. It's a fantastic tool, but it's still just one part of a recipe you're following. The path is known, it's safe, and you get a reliable outcome every time.
But the true agent, the master chef, that's a whole different ballgame. You give it a goal and the ingredients, and it figures out the recipe on its own. It tastes, it adjusts, it innovates along the way. The final dish, it could be absolutely amazing or something completely unexpected. That's the trade-off.
Okay, so we've covered the what. Now, how do these things actually work? How do they think and act behind the scenes?
So if you ask an agent, hey, what's 25 times 4 plus 10, how does it actually use a tool to solve that instead of just, guessing? Well, it doesn't guess. Instead, it follows this really simple but incredibly powerful loop.
This loop is basically the agent's heartbeat. First it thinks, the LLM creates a plan. Then it acts. It checks if that plan needs a tool. If it does, it observes by executing the tool and getting a result. And then it just repeats. That result gets fed right back to the LLM so it can continue the plan, going through that cycle over and over until the goal is met.
Now, you could build this in a couple of ways. The first is what we'll call the raw Python way. You literally build the engine, that while loop, yourself. And a lot of experts, like Andrew Ng, really recommend doing this first. Why? Because it forces you to build the agent's heartbeat from scratch. It's not just some homework assignment. It builds a deep, fundamental intuition for how these things work. So later, when a more complex agent breaks, and trust me, it will, you'll know exactly where to start debugging because you built the engine yourself.
Then there's the framework way. Tools like LangChain are awesome, but that engine, that whole while loop, is hidden away inside pre-built functions. This lets you build way faster. But it's really best to use them after you get the core concepts so you actually understand what's happening under the hood.
All right, so whether you build it in raw Python or you use a framework, you've got the basic loop. But that's when the real work starts, because building an agent is one thing, making it reliable is a whole other challenge. So what's the single biggest thing that separates the teams that succeed from the ones that fail?
It's this. Stop vibe checking. Seriously. The difference between a professional and an amateur team isn't just their coding skills, it's how they deal with errors. Amateurs, they do what's called vibe checking. They run the agent, look at the output, and go, yeah, that looks about right. That is not going to cut it.
The pros, they use evals, or evaluations. This is a disciplined, data-driven process for testing your agent. Instead of just guessing, they use this rigorous, automated system to find weaknesses and, this is the important part, to guide their improvements. It tells them exactly what to fix.
So, this all boils down to 3 keys to success. First, you gotta decompose. Break down your complex application into a sequence of small, manageable tasks. Second, learn the fundamentals. Build it in raw Python first. Really understand the mechanics before you jump to a framework. And third, and maybe most importantly, use disciplined evals. Let data, not your gut feeling, guide you on what part of your system to improve.
And that last point, that's the secret to winning. Setting up proper evals is what puts you ahead of, get this, an estimated 90% of the competition. 90%. All those other teams are still just vibe checking their AI, and that's a huge opportunity for anyone willing to be disciplined.
So, this brings us back to the central question for anyone building an AI today. Your AI can now follow a recipe. When are you going to let it be the chef? It's all about finding that perfect balance between the safety of a recipe and the incredible power of a master chef.